John doesn't like to talk about it, but he has a law degree from Harvard. He worked at the FCC. Tell us what you did at the FCC, and did you learn anything about computer communication technology there?
I was a journalist when I graduated from college. I'd been a journalism major at SMU, and my first exposure to computers was when I was editing the newspaper, and I was 3 credits short in one area, and I ended up taking a logic class. And I never understood why logic was in the philosophy department, because it seemed to me everything I was learning about had everything to do with computers. And so this was 1979, and I went into the computer lab and wrote some BASIC and punched cards, and I learned a couple of things. First of all, the logic part of it fascinated me, but the rest of it I found very difficult. I just didn't have the patience to sit and punch cards, and then when I finally got it right, I didn't have the patience to wait for the cards to go off, and you've all felt that. But I had a kind of distant love of computers, and in fact, we were doing all of the editing and publishing of the paper on computers at that point. It seemed very.
That was at SMU? It
was at SMU, and it seemed very. It seemed obviously like the coming wave. We were already sort of in the PC era, but it was a career change for me to go from journalism to law school, and I did that because I had met a lot of people in the news business at that point who had law degrees rather than business degrees for various reasons. And after I graduated from Harvard, I went to Washington because I wanted to stay in media law, and I went to work for a really fantastic small First Amendment law firm called Wiley, Ryan & Fielding, and so I was practicing First Amendment law. And I quickly learned that if you were going to get your ticket punched in law school, in law practice in Washington, you needed to go to work for a regulatory agency, presumably one that was in your field. So I went to work for the FCC. I went to work as the legal advisor, and then later the chief of staff to a commissioner named Irvin Duggan. And in that period, this was 1991 to 1993, there was a tremendous amount of change and consolidation and tumult in Washington around all that. And I did learn quite a bit about computing. I learned a hell of a lot about the emergence of cellular, the convergence of content companies and networking companies, and ultimately, I was going to go back to law practice, but my boss, Irvin Duggan, was named the president and CEO of PBS in late 1993, and he asked me to go with him. And I said, look, I'll go on one condition, which is that I don't want to practice law. I don't want to be the general counsel. I'm going to completely change course. So he was confident enough and trusting enough to put me in charge of a portfolio of a lot of things nobody else wanted to focus on at that point, one of which was the possibility of putting PBS on the internet. Now, the last thing I had seen before I left the FCC was Mark Andreessen coming to the FCC, showing us the Mosaic browser and kind of introducing us to what was already happening on the World Wide Web. And I just immediately thought this was a revelation. So to make a long story short, PBS had a kind of nascent desire to put PBS and the member stations on the internet, which we completely scrapped in favor of launching PBS.org, which I co-founded in 1995 with a group of people from the education department at PBS. And from there on, we were just riding a rocket. PBS.org was one of the fastest growing sites.
Were you working in DC at that time?
I was, yeah. It's based in Alexandria. We were really committed to the internet as a strategy, and that's where I sort of got more deeply immersed in this fantastic world of communications and computing and media and television all merging onto one platform.
So then you became a media executive, and from PBS you went to Pearson. Tell us about your role in Pearson in London and how maybe that prepared you a bit for becoming the CEO and president of the Computer History Museum.
Well, I did go to Pearson. I went to Pearson in 2000. Pearson's a very large publishing company, the Financial Times, Penguin Books, and then the biggest division was education publishing, so Addison Wesley and Longman and a number of really big titles. Pearson was really late to the internet party at that point. It was already 2000. They really didn't have a strategy, and they needed some people to come to work at Pearson who understood what the internet would mean to old media companies like Pearson. So I ended up running a kind of hybrid group that was one part television and interactive educational media and one part digital media for Penguin Books. And I did that for a number of years. I built a big team there. We had a team in Beijing and a team in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was a fantastic experience. It was my first chance to really run an organization and build it from scratch. It was kind of entrepreneurial within a big company, and I learned a tremendous amount and made quite a few mistakes, and it was a great learning experience.
Well, it seems that you capitalize and leverage that learning experience by the virtual museum that exists today on the computerhistory.org website. It's greatly improved. Has anybody visited that place? Computer History, have any went to the? Well, I would encourage you to do so. And if you have, take a return visit. There's a whole lot of things there that have been added during John's tenure from 2008 that weren't there before, and it's really world class. It's a virtual museum. That's why I say the Computer History Museum in Mountain View is a triple threat. Number one is artifacts and exhibits. Number two, I would say, is the seminars, lectures, conversations, panel sessions like the sold out session last night. And number three, last but not least, is the virtual museum. And we can thank John and his leadership for that.